Well, good evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You can imagine how important it is for us to have a full room and to have your support and to have your willingness to hear our story. I want to thank especially the Center of Human Rights and Legal Pluralism of McGill. I want to thank the director, Colleen Shepard. I want to thank Nandini, Rene Provost, who is here with us, Robert Leakey, and of course, Mr. Cutler, who made a big effort to come from Ottawa today. Thank you so much. And to the team that has put this together, Mariela Tovar, Claudia Flamant, Carla, Carlos, who are students here and have given us a lot of support. For me, I'm here as a citizen, as a Venezuelan citizen, as a witness of what has happened in Venezuela since last year, in the protests of 2014. I was thinking that a year ago, I would have never been asked to come to a law institution, to a university, to talk about human rights. My life, as the life of many Venezuelans, changed after February 2014. I'm an artist. I work in culture. I promote art and culture of Venezuela. Usually, I have been invited to universities to talk about that. So for me, it's very sad to bring the images and the stories that I'm going to bring today. Usually, I like to talk about the beautiful things that happen in Venezuela. Today is different. I have to talk about the tragedy of our lives right now in Venezuela. So I want to start with showing a video that has very tough images, and as I say, I wish I wouldn't have to show it today. I need some help. Maybe Clara can help, because I don't know where do I have to, maybe here for the video? Okay.
No?
Not yet.
There you go.
Comenzó como una protesta estudiantil por el intento de violación dentro de una universidad a un estudiante del estado Táchira. Esto fue el detonante de una serie de protestas estudiantiles en esa parte del país. Con la detención de varios de los estudiantes por manifestar, se intensificó la protesta y se unieron muchas de las principales ciudades del país, incluyendo la capital, Caracas. A esa protesta estudiantil se sumaron otras muchas quejas que tenía la sociedad civil en general: escasez de productos básicos, corrupción gubernamental y violaciones a los derechos humanos. De estas marchas resultaron los 3 primeros muertos y numerosos heridos. 3 personas asesinadas con disparos a la cabeza el 12 de febrero, luego de una marcha promovida por los estudiantes para pedir a la Fiscalía General de la República la liberación de los estudiantes detenidos. Días después aparecieron videos en los que se veía a funcionarios policiales disparando contra los manifestantes, incluso mostrando el momento exacto de la muerte de uno de ellos. Ya van varias semanas de distintas expresiones por parte de los manifestantes y de represión sistemática por parte del gobierno y grupos armados apoyados por él. Entonces, ¿qué pasa en Venezuela? Violaciones a los derechos humanos. El Foro Penal Venezolano es una organización sin fines de lucro conformada por una red de abogados de todo el país, que se ha dedicado desde el principio a asistir legalmente a los manifestantes frente a la gran cantidad de detenciones y abusos por parte del gobierno nacional y a defender a quienes han sufrido de alguna manera violaciones a sus derechos humanos.
Estamos viviendo en la peor crisis histórica de detenciones, o la mayor cantidad de detenciones que ha existido históricamente en el país.
Los abusos y violaciones por parte de los cuerpos policiales y Guardia Nacional en Venezuela van desde el uso de gases tóxicos y en exceso frente a manifestantes desarmados y en zonas residenciales donde habitan personas mayores y niños, pasando por disparos de perdigones a muy corta distancia de los manifestantes con una intención clara de hacerles daño, causándole así heridas graves, lesiones de gran magnitud o hasta la muerte, como en el caso de Geraldine Moreno, quien muere por un disparo de perdigones a la cara. También se ha demostrado el uso indebido de armamento no autorizado para repeler manifestaciones pacíficas e incluso se ha hablado de presencia de cuerpos policiales no destinados al trato de este tipo de manifestaciones y de grupos de civiles armados disparando a manifestantes apoyados por los cuerpos policiales y militares. Estas son nuestras denuncias. Estos son sus testimonios.
Mi hijo fue vilmente maltratado, humillado, violado, vejado.
Tenía en posición fetal, arrodillado con la cabeza. Yo metí mi cabeza y yo le hice mucho meter la cabeza aquí entre las piernas.
Primero que bajarme los boxers y penetrarme a mí.
Desde un principio que nos estaban golpeando, decían que nos iban a violar.
Literalmente en ese momento nos estaban saltando en la cabeza a nosotros, la Guardia Nacional. Estaban saltando solo en nuestra cabeza, nos estaban golpeando con la escopeta, nos pateaban, todo. Siempre nos decían que nos iban a matar, que nos iban a violar, que no íbamos a ver a nuestras familias.
Yo me siento violada, herida, maltratada, humillada, vejada, todo por una Guardia Nacional, 2 funcionarios de ellos mismos que me patearon hasta que quisieron.
Bueno, nos amenazaron de muerte, nos amenazaron de violaciones, nos amenazaron de cortarnos las manos, los brazos y un montón de cosas que sencillamente nadie debe escuchar, y mucho menos en ese momento tan vulnerable en el que todos mis compañeros fueron golpeados brutalmente.
Torturado por los medios de este país, los medios de seguridad, por el SEBIN, señores. Fue torturado por más de 4 o 5 horas, con descargas de corriente en todo su cuerpo, hasta caer desmayado una y otra vez.
I know many of you have seen videos like this in the internet. This is not the only video. There are many ONGs that are working to denounce what is happening right now in Venezuela. I wanted to bring this video in particular, made by Foro because they too are being persecuted. One of the lawyers that works in Foro is now in prison. They are victims, just like the protesters, just for defending the people who want to protest. As Aung San Suu Kyi said, under authoritarian governments, dissent may be a crime. Definitely in Venezuela, to think differently is a crime. These images that you just saw are from 2014. Now, in 2015, the Minister of Defense said that they are allowed to use lethal weapons, deadly weapons in the protest. Where can that be in the 21st century? In what country is there allowed to use lethal weapons against their own population? This is what's happening in Venezuela. It just happened last week. So it's legal for our government right now, for the Maduro regime, to kill people in the protest. Every country has people who protest for different reasons. It is a human right to dissent from the government. People in Venezuela have the right to protest. We have the right to protest first for the right of life, because Venezuela is one of the most violent countries in South America, in Latin America. So we have the right to protest just for that reason, just for the life of the people, of us. We have the right to protest for health, for education, to be able to travel through the country. There are many reasons why students and why people are protesting. The protests didn't start in 2014. They started long years ago. but they have just increased because the situation in our country has been deteriorating on and on. Not only students protest, also regular citizens go out and protest because they have the pain of their children who don't have opportunities in our country. Also the mothers, the grandmothers. And this is the repression is happening not just in the city of Caracas, but in all the cities. This was Basil da Costa. He was the first student who was killed last year. He was killed on the 12th of February. I really have to say he can be any of us. He was just a student who decided to go out that day, and he didn't go back to his house. Now his mother is alone, but not only alone, she doesn't have even the, ¿cómo se dice, los culpables? The guilty. There's no, the trial hasn't even started to find out who is responsible for Basil's death. This is Robert Redman. That same day, the 12th of February, he was also killed. His father says he didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to protest for his rights. This is Genesis Carmona. Just a couple days later, she was killed in the city of Valencia. Like them, it's 43 people who were killed in this protest, and there are no answers to their families for who committed those crimes. There are proofs that those crimes were committed by the guards, by the police forces, and by the paramilitary who are also that work with the government. So imagine the pain of each of those families. There's also been torture and abuse in the protest. This is Marvinia Jimenez. She was assaulted by the Bolivarian Guard, and now they say she's guilty for protesting. This is Marcelo Crobato. Marcelo Crobato is a member of Foro Penal, the video that you just saw. He wanted to defend the students who were protesting, and for defending them, now he's been in prison since April of last year. He's the father of 2, he has a family, and he's in a very complicated health situation, and in December he attempted to commit suicide. The government has no answer for Marcelo Crobato or his family. This is Rosmin Mantilla. He's a friend of mine. He worked with me in culture. He's an activist. He's an activist for gay rights. And one night, the SEBIN, the police, went into his home. He used to live with his grandparents, and they took him. They say he was helping the protest, and he couldn't be free. He was arrested, and his trial has been deferred 11 times. 11 times. Justice, there's no justice for Rosmin. He's in El SEBIN since May of last year. This is Daniel Cevallos. He's a young politician who has a dream of a better Venezuela. He's a professional. He loves his country. He loves his city, San Cristobal. He was elected mayor in December of 2014. By in December 2013. In April 2014, he was arrested. They say he was rebellious, that he could not be a mayor. He's been in prison. He's in prison in Ramo Verde, a military prison, away from his family. He has 3 young children who live in San Cristobal, and he's in prison in Caracas. This is Gilberto. Gilberto Sojo is an activist. He directs a program for elder people. It's called Casa de los Abuelos in San Agustín, in a poor barrio of Caracas. He's always very enthusiastic. I know him personally. And he and his wife were arrested one night with their 3-year-old daughter and taken to El SEBIN. El SEBIN, El Helicoide, is a horrible prison that wasn't meant to be a prison. It's just a space that was converted into a prison. They took the 3 of them, including their 3-year-old child. And the mother, Carolina, and their daughter were with Gilberto for 35 hours until they let them free, but Gilberto is still in prison. And we have no information about his trial. This is Maria Elena Uzcategui. She was helping the protesters. She took water and food for the protesters. For that reason, she was in prison. Now, she's under house arrest with terrible health conditions and with 20 pounds less. This is Christian Holdak. Christian is a photographer and a student, a graphic design student. He has no political affiliation. On the 12th of February of last year, he decided to go to the protest like thousands of us who were there. And he was taking photographs. And for taking photographs, he was in prison that day. And he's still in prison in a very delicate condition. I think I could talk about many more people. There are 63 people with cases that are similar like this. I'm sure that they remind you of people that are similar to you. Some are mothers, some are students, people who just want to have their voice heard, and the government put them in prison. My brother's one of them. My brother is a political leader. He has the dream of a better Venezuela. He wants a just Venezuela. He wants a democratic Venezuela, and he knows it can happen because he knows that other countries have gone through difficult histories, difficult situations, but if we unite as a population and we demand our rights, eventually we'll get that democracy. But the sacrifice has been big. He, as Carlos narrated, he went out on the 12th of February to protest. It was a student protest because the 12th of February is the Day of the Youth in Venezuela. So the students were the ones who called for the protest, and many political leaders, as Carlos, as Maria Corina Machado, as Antonio Ledesma, as Leopoldo, went with the students to protest. But the government, who have been persecuting my brother for 10 years, this is not new. For 10 years, different ways with trials, with not letting him run for mayor, with a discredit against him. They decided that, as Maduro said, it was time for him to go to jail. And he said, Leopoldo, I have your jail ready for you. And what he wanted, what the government wanted, was that Leopoldo would leave the country. They said, oh, he's just going to run away. No, Leopoldo said, no, I'm not going to leave the country. I'm going to face you directly in the eye. I'm going to face justice, even though it is unjust, until things change. Things have to change. So on the 18th, Leopoldo decided to hand himself in. I have to tell you, as a sister, I was deeply afraid, deeply afraid. I thought my brother that day could get killed. That's what I thought, because there's so much violence in our country that was a possibility. Thank God that didn't happen, but now he is in jail, and he's facing a very unfair trial. These were his words that day. If my imprisonment contributes to the awakening of the people, and if it helps Venezuela to awake once and for all, so that most of us who want a change may build that change in peace and democracy, then it will have been worth it. Peace and democracy. He always, as Carlos Vecchio, as Maria Corina Machado, as many leaders and many students have always said, a peaceful protest. We are pacifists. We believe in non-violent demonstrations, and we want to achieve democracy. But for believing that way, for thinking that way, he is in prison as many others. This was almost a year ago when he was handing himself in. In the picture you cannot see, but he had a flower in his hand, and the people were all dressed in white, symbolizing peace. This is a self-portrait Leopoldo did. I'm an artist, and that's what I can offer him. When I go to visit him, I teach him how to draw. He has a lot of time, so he now is, I think he's starting to draw and paint very well. I wanted to bring you that of him. I have never shown it in public, so I think he's doing very well. Leopoldo is isolated. He's in a cell in Ramo Verde, a military prison, and he should have the right to get visitors, as prisoners do. But Leopoldo is not allowed to receive any visitors except for his direct family. His direct family, as they understand, is his parents, his wife, his children, and his sister. That's it. That and his lawyers are the only people allowed to have direct contact with Leopoldo. So he's in complete isolation. As experts say, to be in isolation is a way of torture. So my brother is being tortured. He's been tortured for that reason. He's been tortured because they throw excrement in his jail and then cut off the water, so he cannot clean himself. That's torture. Sometimes in the middle of the night, guards come in, all dressed in black, with arms and ski mask, and throw in the ground all his books and push him around and take his notes, because he writes his own defense. I mean, he has a lawyer, but he also writes his defense. They take away those notes from him. So it's another way of torture. So like all the other prisoners, Leopoldo is being tortured. He is not having a fair trial. When the lawyers go to visit him, they don't have the confidentiality that they should be allowed. The meetings are not private, and many times they're being taped. The trial should be a public trial. That's what our Constitution says. It's not public. When we get there they call it the Palace of Justice. I would call it the Palace of Injustice. When we arrive there, when he has trial, the whole building is surrounded by hundreds of military men that don't allow people to go in except the people that are going to that trial. It's very difficult to get to that audience room. So the trial is not public. Journalists are not allowed in, and of course, not regular people can go in there. So every day we see more and more and more violations of rights in the case of Leopoldo. And I'm sure I wanted to bring the other faces because Leopoldo is one symbol of the rest. And Leopoldo always tells me when I visit him, Diana, please always talk about all of us. Don't just talk about my case. Please let the people know that this is a problem against all of Venezuelans. This can happen to anyone. Just as it happened even to some people who were doing Twitter. There are 7 people right now who are in jail for tweeting messages against the government. So, as I said before, a year ago, I thought I would be dedicating my time to art and culture, as that's what I like to do, that's what I'm prepared to do, but my life changed. So a group of us decided to do a project which is called Acción por la Libertad, Action for Liberty. What we have done in this first year is document what is going on in these cases. We do a newsletter every week, and we send it out with different articles about what is going on and different data in order to let people know what's going on. This is one of the bulletins. The last one, we're already number 43. I thought in my mind, in my innocent mind, that maybe we were going to do 10 or 20, and then this nightmare was going to end. We're now in bulletin 43. For today, I promised Claudia and Mariela that I would have the version in English. We think it is very important that the English-speaking people also know what's going on in Venezuela. So today we started sending out this newsletter. And when we were thinking, well, how can, maybe you're saying, well, how can we help? We're in Montreal, we're far away, we cannot go out and protest, or maybe you can. You could protest in front of the consulate or the embassy. And I know that many of you protested last year, 2014. You helped us from Montreal, from Canada, help give us energy to Venezuela by protesting here. It was exciting to see pictures of this city all snowed with Venezuelan flags and all of you freezing and protesting. That gives us the energy we need to keep going. Another way that I wanted to invite you was to letting people know the testimonies of the victims. A friend, Roberto Mata, who is a photographer, he did testimonies, 21 testimonies of different victims. This is one. This is Esther, and she received a tiro, a bullet. She was wounded in one of the protests, and she tells her story. So these are in Instagram. You can take them down, and you can share it with your friends. We have these books that we did, but we cannot share it with all of you, but we can show you around. Yeah, you can pass them around. Because we think it's important that these faces of these people, these stories, the stories are shared. This is a way you can help us. I want to finish by saying some words of Oscar Arias. As you know, Oscar Arias was president of Costa Rica, Nobel Prize. And he said, he wrote an article last week or 2 weeks ago about Venezuela. And he said something very important. This is not about a problem about left or right. This is a problem of democracy. So in Venezuela, we have a crisis in democracy, and we have to unite all our forces to fight for liberty. When you don't have liberty in one community, in one city, in one country, the liberty of everybody is at risk. Thank you very much.